I'm gonna be me.
Yeah, you know I'm recording, just so you know. This is all screenshotable.
Ah, dang it.
Hey, folks, in this interview, I'm sitting down with my good friend, Mr. Steve Brazill. This conversation is all about the trifecta of geekiness, photography, and podcasting. Mr. Steve Brazill, what is going on, dude?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. You know what? This conversation is historic in a lot of ways because I am now in my final resting place. So
yeah, your new studio, your new digs.
My new house. Yeah, my new house finally got done. I moved in, which is why it looks so sparse and everything. And we were, behind the scenes, inside baseball, you and I spent like a half an hour trying to help me color correct my shots. So
you still look a little bit anemic and sick, but it's normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's my Walking Dead LUT, right? So it's all good. But yeah, man, so this is it's an honor to interview you as the first TWIP Talks interview to happen out of my new address. So
the new TWIP Studios.
Yeah, the new, I don't know what I'm going to call it. I'm calling this room kind of the Bat Cave. So this is going to be the Bat Cave, Something
inside me says that's been used, but
I'm embracing and extending it into to my usage. And Bruce Wayne, Frederick Johnson, come on,
Same thing. It's the same guy.
Thing.
I've never seen the two of you in a room together, so
maybe he's better looking, he can fight, and he's rich. So what? So this interview, man, is going to be all about you. But like I said in the intro there, the trifecta that is Steve Brazill. I'm sure I don't want to limit you to just three things. So I'm sure you're much deeper than just three things. But specifically for this interview, I want to talk about
not much deeper than three things.
I want to talk about your photography. I want to talk about your love of technology and your broadcasting and how that transitioned into now what you're doing in podcasting. This is what happens when I interview good friends of mine, because it ends up being just like we're having drinks and drinking some good Madeira and talking about stuff we love, right? Which is podcasting, geekiness, and all this. So let's start. Yeah, I want to start with your career. You mentioned in the green room before we started that you kind of fell into photography. This wasn't like a lot of people I interview. They always say, yeah, I've always wanted to be a photographer, and my dad gave me his old Rolleiflex, and I was bitten, and then now I'm a famous photographer.
Oh, and I started shooting film, and I shot Minolta, and yeah. Most photographers are creatives. Yeah. Right? And I never really considered myself, still don't, a creative. I'm an accidental photographer. I'm a geek.
Nice.
And I'm also a father. Mm-hmm. And when my son was in high school, he was in marching band, and we're up in the stands on a high school football field. And, you see professional football and these things the stadiums are lit up like daylight. Yeah. High school football is not like that. So I walked into my local camera store, which was actually Ritz at the time. And I go into this store and I explain I want to be able to, photograph my son in marching band walking around a field with a snare drum from way up in the stands. Yeah. And they presented me with, a Canon and a Nikon. And the only reason I'm a Canon shooter is because it felt more comfortable in my hand. Mm-hmm. And it was a Canon XTI at the time, a little teeny Canon XTI. And then he handed me a 70-300 f3.5 to 5.6 and a 70-200 2.8. And he said, the 70-200 2.8 is more money. It's going to be a much better lens for what you're doing. Here's the less expensive 70-300. And I literally looked at him and went, I don't understand. 300 is more than 200, and that's white, and the camera's black. Yeah, yeah. I can't have a white lens on a black camera. Yeah, so I bought the 70-300 variable aperture. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made. But not being a creative and not knowing anything about photography, that was the single best move I ever made. And I still tell people, if you want to really understand the exposure triangle, use the wrong lens for the job. Yeah. Yeah. Because as a noob,
head against the ceiling, right?
Yeah. I didn't understand why at 70, I'd get the exposure, I'd chimp the back of the screen and my son looked great. And then I'd zoom in and I'd chimp the back of the screen, and he was dark because it went from 3.5 to 5.6, and I didn't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I learned photography in that trying to make the wrong equipment work right.
But isn't that how we learn generally, is making, I mean, yeah, you could book learn all day long. Like, for example, if you had read a book on the exposure triangle and, figured out that this is what aperture or f-stop means and this is shutter speed and all that, and then you went into the field, until you actually make mistakes and internalize it, it doesn't really click, right?
Right. I mean, you've got to at some point pull the trigger, make the mistake, look back at it and go, what the heck happened? But when it happens and it's your kid and he's not going to recreate that moment and you want those kid pictures, you want to learn it fast. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, it's the, throw somebody in the water and then tell them, okay, learn to swim.
Yeah. And in the way that we learn, they call it the modes of learning in education, right? And we all learn differently. And the way that I found over the years that I learned the best is by giving myself projects that are outside of my current comfort zone. For example,
right.
Like lately I've been enjoying watching these YouTube videos of people doing these really crazy digital composites in Photoshop, and they're just in a soundtrack and them building in Photoshop. And every single one I watch, I'm like, holy crap, I didn't know that's what that tool did.
Right.
And, you pick things up. And then but the lesson from that is I could watch those all day. And then when I sit down in front of the computer and I try to make what they made, I'm like, wait a minute. It's not
well, and part of
working.
that, though, again, it goes back to being a creative. Part of that is, even if you can remember how to recreate what they did in the video, mm-hmm. your mind sees differently. Mm-hmm. So I think at some level, we're all creatives, right? Yeah. We just see things differently. And what I create, you may look at and go, that's boring, or you may look at it and go, it's amazing. At my level of creativity, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of stumbled into photography just because I was a dad that wanted pictures of his kid. But you started talking this whole conversation about the nexus, and mm-hmm. that's what bit me. Yeah. Was I'm an old-time Microsoft certified systems engineer, way back, NT351. So I'm a geek, right?
You really have a propeller up there. Then.
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that act of trying to figure out how to make that gear work right when I didn't know anything about photography was at home to me, because that's what I do in networking and with computers. So to me, it was just geek stuff. It wasn't photography. It was just, in today's day and age, I didn't shoot film. Mm-hmm. Today's day and age, it was computers.
Yeah. Well, that, and I know I'm skipping over entire, prequels and sequels in the journey, but how did that lead you to concert photography? Because right now, you're like, if people go to Steve Brazill with 2Ls.com, stevebrazill.com, they'll see that you are a highly skilled professional concert photographer. And I've tried to shoot concerts, right? I've shot a concert or two.
Some of your shots, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't suck, but that is the most challenging, maybe not the most, but it is a challenging genre of photography to tackle in terms of
concert
lighting.
Photography to me, and there's wedding photographers that are gonna agree and disagree with me. Concert photography to me is one of the most challenging forms of photography when done right, mm-hmm. that there is. Wedding photography can be.
Why are you pointing at me when you say when done right? What's up? Why?
Well, because it's real easy.
Watch it.
No, but a lot of people, it's, my friend's in a band and they're at the club and they let me use flash.
Yeah.
Right. In real concert photography, like the concert presentation I usually do at small photography groups, is called 3 from the pit, no flash, because that's the standard rule. You get to shoot 3 songs only from what's called the photo pit. You're not allowed to use flash. So, when people go into a bar and they use a flash and they go, concert photography, it's not hard. No, done right, when you only get 3 songs to tell the story of an entire concert, sometimes those 3 songs are from the mixing board in the middle of an arena.
Yeah.
And you can't use flash even if you're in the pit, and you're shooting up noses. And I took a good wedding photographer friend of mine, him, Troy Miller, mm-hmm. To shoot concerts, and he's gotten pretty good at it now. But his first one, and this guy's an award-winning wedding photographer, he knows his gear.
Yeah.
but you stick him in a pit, and it was follow the singer. I'm going to click it. The singer's gone. Where'd he go? Mm-hmm. It can be really, really tough to do. But how I got into concert photography was I've been in radio since 1979, so almost 40 years. And when I got into photography because of my son, and it was geeky, and I kind of connected with it, and it was like, wow, this is kind of cool. I like this. It's dealing with computers. I went to the radio station. I looked at my boss and I said, I've kind of gotten into photography, and, for years we get backstage at concerts, we get tickets. Mm-hmm. Can we get photo passes? And my program director looked at me and said, I don't know, ask somebody. I said, well, I'll go ask, but they're going to want, a business card to prove that I'm the photographer for the radio station. He goes, I'll email you the logo, make your own. God. And within a week, I had business cards for the radio station saying I'm a concert photographer and air personality there. Yeah. And within 3 weeks, I was shooting Heart and Def Leppard.
Wow.
Now, that's unusual. Most people can't go shoot Heart and Def Leppard or Taylor Swift or Aerosmith their first show. Yeah. Because you have to have a media outlet to give them press coverage. I just am lucky in that I'm in radio, and therefore I'm immediately I have that leg up.
No, I want to pause you right there because you and what was it about? What was it last year? You created a course for TWIP, a free course that walks people through this stuff, right? I don't remember now. It's either 5 or 6 little 5-minute chapters, and it's at TWIP school. Yeah. And basically, it's not a course in concert photography. It's a course in introduction. It's ways for you to try and break into and get your feet wet with it. It's an appetizer. Right?
It's an appetizer. I mean, you can't teach concert photography. I mean, the best probably teacher of concert photography is Alan Hess out of San Diego. And at Photoshop World, for years, they did a concert photography pre-conference event. And that was Alan Hess that did that.
Okay, so what I'll do is in this video, I'll put a little lower third where people can link to and head over, and also in the description for the video in this blog post, I'll put a link to that course. It's a free course, so people can head over there and sign up. Thank you for doing that, by the way. That's
yeah, and the feedback I've gotten on people that have checked it out. Not many have contacted me, but the ones that have like it. It's a good little introduction just to give you tips on how to feel more comfortable when you do concert photography. It's an alien thing. I mean, it really is. But I will warn you, once you do concert photography, it is, in my opinion, the most addicting sport of photography you will ever find.
Yeah. It's almost, I look at concert photography as, in this, I say this, I'll preface this with, I'm not a concert photographer, but when I've tried it, I can see why you'd say that, because, I remember shooting this band and I was in the front, and there's this, the singer, and they put the spotlight on her, and, she's making all these facial expressions and hugging the mic, and, there's guys in the background jamming, and it was just like a plethora of shots available to you if you know how to capture them.
And it's a sensory overload, because you have a lighting director whose job, this is bringing it to photography, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a dynamic range in photography, many cameras, maybe 9 stops, maybe 11 stops. The human eye is somewhere, I think, in the low 20s or something like that. And you have a lighting director whose entire job it is to push the extremes of the human eye. There's no way your camera is going to capture that dynamic range. Yeah. So trying to find that balance of not having the face blown out, or half the face blown out and half the face in complete shadow, and not having a mic stand come out of the head or whatever it is. What happens is you'll get back, you'll look at your pictures on the computer and go, oh, I can do that one better. I want to do it again. Yeah. And you'll want to do it again right then. And you can't. You get 3 songs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's why I was going to draw the parallel to wedding photography, because wedding photography, all things considered, you get one chance at these shots, and they're not repeatable. And, if you're at a concert, I'd say, and you're just there kind of shooting it, and you got to come away with one image that's going to go in a newspaper or something, that's one thing. If you're shooting a wedding like Troy, then all of your shots for the most part have to be great, right?
Yeah.
There's no margin for, oh, well, let me, next time I'll bring this lens and get this.
The cake cutting ones didn't work well. I just won't give them those.
Exactly. The first kiss, I didn't like that. So yeah, we'll do that again. No, not going to work.
Exactly.
Yeah. But okay. So let's switch gears a little bit. As people may be able to discern by the sultry, deep tones of your radio voice, you mentioned before, you are a broadcaster and have been one for some time. You're on the radio in Southern California, on what we call terrestrial radio, right?
Yeah,
podcast.
Traditional radio.
Traditional, is that what they call it? Yeah.
Terrestrial, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about that a little bit. Your career in broadcasting, because you love that as well, right? Obviously.
I love being on the radio. Mm-hmm. I don't do it much anymore. Years ago, I just decided I'm just going to do it part-time and keep my hand in it. I'm lucky I'm at a radio station where they're willing to let me do a weekend shift and do fill-ins when they need fill-ins, and they call me a lot for fill-ins. But when I originally went to college, I was going to I went to Arizona State, and I was going to major in computer science at the time, long before the personal computer was around, because I'm old. And a friend of mine that worked in radio in Palm Springs took me to a little radio station one weekend in Palm Springs, California, top 40 radio station. He's spinning 45s. And it hit like 2 o'clock in the morning, and this is a top 40 radio station in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, he stopped playing the 45s and he put on Zeppelin and led an album track. And I went, I didn't know you guys did that. He goes, oh, we're not supposed to, but nobody's listening right now. And he did that, a couple albums in a row, and I just got really addicted to it, and I dropped out of college and got into radio. Wow. And it's not something I'd encourage anybody else to do. It's probably the one mistake I made in my life, at least. But radio there's just something addicting about being in a room on your own. You can't see your audience. Yeah. But you have to identify with them, right? You got to be in that room and understand, are they out in the backyard barbecuing? Are they stuck on a freeway in Southern California? Are they on their way to their kid's soccer game? You got to identify with them so that you can communicate with them. Yeah. Because they have a lot of other options now. You got satellite radio, you got, streaming services. So it's just really, really addicting. Yeah. To be on mic.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's a good sort of thread that's weaving through this conversation, addiction, right? And finding something that you love and just, you would do it whether you were getting paid or not for the most part. Correct. Right? And that's the addiction. If it's the opposite and it's like, that old Dunkin' Donuts commercial where it's time to make the donuts. I got to go in. It's 3 a.m. to make the donuts. Right? If your job is that, you're not going to last. And it's going to reflect in your final output. And your wrinkles and gray hair, right?
And I think there's a lot of professional photographers that are the exact same way. Yeah. They do photography because they love it, but I know a lot of photographers. Most concert photographers can't make a living at concert photography. Yeah. There's not much money in it, if any. So you do it because it's a labor of love and something that you really like. But I think it was George Burns that said, if you want to live a long life, fall in love with what you do for a living.
Yeah. My dad said that too, by the way. So
is your dad George Burns?
Yeah. I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I mean the quote is if you want to have, what was it? It's something along the lines of, if you never want to work a day of your life, do something you love, right?
Yeah, and it's so true. Yeah. Which is why I do podcasting now. Yeah. Yeah. Because it was you started by saying the trifecta, and really that's what podcasting is to me. I had not really done much on camera stuff, but I do a lot of voiceover stuff over the years. And locally here in Southern California, I do some television stuff for a local, it's actually a government, the city I live in, their government television station. Mm-hmm. I host the Mayor's Monthly Television Show, and we have a show where I interview local musicians and stuff like that. Yeah. And same type of thing, I kind of got to like being on camera a little bit. It's a different element to kind of change of things. Yeah. That's what led me to podcasting.
Yeah, good segue, because I wanted to segue the whole, we talked about the photography, we talked about broadcasting, and actually before we talk about podcasting and your show Behind the Shot on the TWIP Network, I want to talk about your the geeky side.
Nice little slide in there.
Yes. Yeah, you see that? Yeah. That's a little plug. Get in there.
That's called being a pro, man.
Yeah, but the geeky side of you, like I said, before we started recording, you mentioned that you are, once we finish this interview, you're going to hop in the car and go pick up your brand new Apple Watch, even though there's nothing wrong with the one that you have on your wrist right now, right?
No, there's nothing wrong with the Apple Watch Series 1 that I have now.
Oh, it's a Series 1. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I never went to the 2.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm a geek. I'm a big geek. I love gear. I love, as a network consultant, which is really what my day job is, for lack of a better phrase, I deal with nothing but Windows servers and Windows PCs and client machines. Myself, I'm an Apple fan. Not an Apple fan that won't criticize the company if they do it. It's not fanboy Apple fan, but I'm a strong Apple fan, right?
Yeah.
I like their user experience. We've had the conversation. Yeah. I like their, a lot of people that are techie like me like the more Android stuff because they can customize it. But for me and my style, I like the user experience that I get with Apple. And I'm one of the people, I know people who don't. I'm one of the people who love my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
It changed some of the way I do things, having an Apple Watch. So yeah, hopefully that mine is in, my wife's isn't. So I'm hoping they'll have one like my wife's, a 38 millimeter in, that maybe just has a different band, and we can pick up hers at the same time. But
you can't go home with just an Apple Watch for yourself.
No, I can't do that. But I'm probably going to finally have to give up my grandfathered in AT&T Unlimited plan.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. That's yeah, they get you. They're going to get you. But
they've been trying for years. They may do it now.
And I'll tell you, on the Apple Watch, I was lukewarm. In fact, I bought this. This is Series 2. I didn't wear this for a couple months. I was like, and I'm tired of wearing my Apple Watch. Everybody's got one that I see, and I'm not really using it that much, and the alerts are bugging me. And you go out to dinner and you're distracted and all that stuff. So what I did was I turned off most of the alerts, which instantly made it more useful. But I'll tell you, like we mentioned in the beginning, I just moved into this house, and over the past week or so, I've been having the house upgraded to a smart home, right? So smart door locks and lights and ceiling fans that are all controllable through the Amazon Echo and also through this thing, and my phone completely makes this thing worth it. Like, this is like my link to the house. I can see cameras, I can unlock doors, I can turn on fans, I can it's ridiculous. I can't see not having this thing now.
No, and my security cameras, when we just went on a trip overseas shortly before this is recording, I don't know when it airs, but before recording it, and we're walking the streets in France, and I'd get a pop-up animal scene in your backyard. And there's a little screenshot of what the camera saw that it thought was an animal, which quite often was actually a car. So, okay, there's that.
Yeah.
But, it's just an incredible time.
Well, it could have been a cougar,
be alive,
depending on the kind of car. It could have been a cougar or...
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, exactly. A Pinto.
A Pinto. There you go. Mustang.
That goes back. I just dated myself. Yeah. We live in an incredible time from a technology point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look, we're in different areas of the state of California, and one of us looks great.
Yeah. I love it. See, that's how people can tell we're friends, because the conversation usually from this fork in the road will digress exponentially. It's out of control. All right, man, let's talk about podcasting, because I know you got to get over there to get that watch. I know you're like trying to get out of the door. Now you're a podcaster. You got Behind the Shot going on. You got your listener base is growing up and to the right. Every new episode you launch, you're adding new listeners. It's getting bigger and bigger and more popular. You've interviewed some big names in photography. Tell us, first of all, I want to hear your thoughts about the podcast itself, but I want to hear about the transition. And this is for my own edification. I want to hear about the transition, not really a transition, but it's more of an evolution from what you were doing and sort of radio-based broadcasting into online podcasting, and how you manage that, that traversal. Yeah,
it was kind of weird. I'd had the idea in my head, because being a geek, I'm a big podcast listener. And there was a moment where I think it was the iPhone 6 launch. It might have been before that. that we were in Northern California. We were in the wine country, and Leo Laporte's network is up there, Twit Studios in Petaluma, and my wife has friends in Petaluma. So we thought, let's drive to Petaluma, and we'll sit in the audience during the launch.
And he lets people do that, by the way.
He lets people do that. And I talked to him for a short period of time. He was very gracious, very nice. There were some other people there, too, that were very nice. And it was like, yeah, I want to do this. And then I was also a big listener of TWIP. And I simply reached out to you. I saw you tweet that you were going to be in LA, and I reached out to you and said, when you're down here, I'm a member of the Magic Castle. If you've ever been, let's go. And you were like, I've been before, but it's been years. Heck yeah. And we went to the Magic Castle, and we've been friends for the last number of years ever since.
Yeah. We won't talk about that O.J. Simpson running through traffic.
You running down the streets of Hollywood because the car is stuck in traffic in a suit and tie in summer weather in Southern California to save our reservation. That, my friend, was friendship. We knew it right away.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, I looked at you that night, and I kind of said, I've had this idea. I want to do a podcast, and this is what I want to do. And you said to me, well, with you being in radio, all of our hosts are photographers. They're not really mic people. Can we maybe do a webinar for the host? I said, yeah, we did that. And then you said, let's do your show on TWIP. And last December, we launched Behind the Shot. And really, it comes from the fact that I'm a podcast listener. In podcasting, I constantly hear interviews with people that have their place, right? You learn, it's kind of like what we're doing here, right? You learn about the person and how they got to where they are and why they got to where they are and why they love what they do. And but from a creative point of view, from a photography point of view, there was one thing missing. If this guy's or girl is that great of a photographer, what do they shoot? Yeah. And I never got to see their work unless afterwards I remembered their name, remembered their website, and went to it. So I thought to myself, what if we reversed the interview? What if we interviewed a photograph? Yeah. What if we looked at a photograph and kind of interviewed the photograph on how did you get made? How did you get to where you are? What choices were made in making this picture through the photographer's voice to try and get inside the mind of how a great photographer works? Because I'm really big on education, right? So I think that's how photographers get better. I do image competitions, and my images get critiqued and beat up all the time. But nothing has made me a better photographer than when a judge rips up my image, and I in my head I'm going, "You're wrong, man. That image is great." Yeah. But inevitably, you always come away going, even though I may disagree with the judge in this image competition, it's kind of weird to know that somebody saw my image that way. Yeah. Yeah. So looking at the image and reverse engineering it with the photographer is just a great way to get better at photography. And you're right. I've had, I don't remember. I've done 20 something episodes now, and I've only been nervous 3 times, and I don't get nervous on a mic. Really? First episode was you. Really? Oh, I was nervous as heck on that one. Rick Salmon, who's a legend in the field and now a friend as well. But first time I interviewed him, I was shaking in my boots. And then the recent episode at the time of this recording is Trey Ratcliffe, who's, everybody knows Trey Ratcliffe. Yeah. Don't mess this up, Steve. Yeah. And he was every guest I've had has been so gracious with their time. And I try not to make it a concert photography podcast. Yeah. I do get concert photographers because they're friends of mine, but I really try and hit landscape and digital artistry. And I've got one coming up that's a guy who shoots for all the branches of the military and aircraft manufacturers. Very cool. Jets in the air. Yeah, a little bit of everything. That's kind of with Trey. With Trey, I hear that from a lot of people. And Trey and I have been friends for a long time. And I think when I first talked to him and I first interviewed him, I was a little bit nervous as well because it's, he wasn't as big as he is now, but he had that trajectory, right? And within, it's much like our interactions and our friendship. Within the first couple of minutes, we realized, kind of kindred spirits. I mean, he's probably one of the most affable people I know. He's just his success masks
his good-naturedness, because people assume that you're an ass if you are successful, and they go in with those preconceived notions. And you meet Trey, and he's just like, he's just like some dude that you're gonna have a beer with or hang out with.
And he said during the conversation, he goes, "I find one of the best things you can do is just not take yourself seriously."
Yeah. No.
And I'm like, exactly.
Which is the hardest thing to do, especially for, I can't speak for all males or females, but for guys, we grow up and are reared to take ourselves seriously.
Well, which is competition, really. We take ourselves seriously because we're competing with the guy next to us.
Yeah, we're competing with the guy next to us. We're trying to impress the girl. We want to do this. We need more money to get the car to impress this girl. It's a constant let's impress people thing. And if like Trey has somehow managed to remove that organ from his body, but still impress. Right. So when you impress and it's a side effect of your personality, it's much more impressive than if you are trying to do it. Right.
And I got to tell you, that conversation with him, there were 2 or 3 times he said something. It's never happened to me before, actually. He said something and I had nothing to say. I was literally left speechless because he would say something that made me go, I completely get it. Makes total sense. I've never, ever heard that statement applied to photography. And how is that possible? I've never heard that, because he gets into color theory. Yeah, just smart guy. So that's the transition to podcasting, and the show is doing well. I'm getting really, really good feedback, and that's what I care about. I want people to get something out of it.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, if they want to check out that interview you did with Trey. I'm looking at it right here. It's called Raise Your Dynamic Range, and it's at on the Behind the Shot podcast. BehindTheShot.tv is the short URL to get to it, or just go to This Week in Photo and click on it in the menu, and you'll get right to it.
And I would suggest people go to thisweekinphoto.com for one reason. You'll see Behind the Shot at the top, but there's a lot of other resources like TWIP School and things like that. So if you just go to thisweekinphoto.com, remember the name, hopefully, Behind the Shot, and go look at it. But there's a lot of good episodes up there. But there's the other TWIP Talks, there's the TWIP School, there's TWIP Glam. So you can kind of browse around and figure out exactly what fits your need at the time, and give me feedback. There's a contact form there.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, on every post that or episode that you release, there's a contact form there for people to say, yeah, I would like to see more of X. Can you do more of X? Right.
And there's a gallery of the guest shots, which we dissect one, but a lot of people shoot different things. Yeah. So in Trey's case, I've got this one museum shot that's just, it's like made up of 250 shots HDR. It's amazing. Yeah. But there's Burning Man shots in the gallery, and all the different types of things that any photographer shoots will be in a gallery. So yeah, you got to go check it out. And again, reach out to me. Tell me what you think. I'm always open to feedback. People tell me, hey, can you try and get this photographer on? And usually I'll try, and often I'll get, no, he doesn't do podcasts or something like that. But.
Well, before we close this off, I'm looking at your website again. It's stevebrazill.com, 2 L's, if people want to go there. Concert photography, congratulations. Awesome body of work. Beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
I was trying to go through your shots here to pick a favorite. It's hard to pick a favorite because it's like, that's good. Oh, wow, that's good. Oh, look, black and white. That's amazing. So I want to put you on the spot. What's your favorite shot? Well, this is a 2-sided coin here. Your favorite shot that you've done so far and why, and your favorite interview, barring the one that we did, episode 0 on your site or your show, but your favorite interview so far and your favorite shot, and both, why?
My favorite shot. That's a tough one because it's probably the next one I'm going to take, right? I mean, it's that old. It's an old saying, but it's really true.
It's like,
I'm always looking for a new shot. Yeah. My favorite artist to shoot is the band Korn. I could shoot the band Korn every single day, but my favorite shot of all time is probably one. I think it's on my website. It's a black and white. I did at the House of Blues in Anaheim, and the stage is in the distance, blowing out white, and there's a hand up in the air, and that shot. I was not in anybody's way. I'm back against a wall, holding my camera up with a 10 millimeter. And I'm taking it, and the angle's too high. And I'm taking it, the angle's too, and I got it just right. I'm like, okay, here we go. I figured out the angle I want. I hold it up, and as I hold the camera up, a person in the audience raises their hand up. And in my head, I'm saying, no. And then when I was done, I looked at it, and their hand landed perfectly in the spotlight, did a flare off their hand, and I literally went up to them and said, thank you very much, and showed them the picture. And it's sitting, I can't show you, but I printed it 2 foot by 3 foot on aluminum. And it's sitting on the wall here next to me. It's my favorite. My favorite guest, that's a hard one. It would there'd be more than one. Yeah. Trey is definitely one of them because there was something just really interesting about Trey himself. I've done Rick Salmon twice, and Rick has an ability in him to really teach people. I mean, he can communicate the point really well. Mm-hmm. As a concert photographer, episode number 2 is Christy Goodwin. And episode number 7, I think it was Adam L. Macias. And they're both music photographers. Mm-hmm. The story behind the shot of Christy Goodwin's episode is fascinating. It's an iconic picture of Katy Perry used for one of her tours. Mm-hmm. And Christy's a sweetheart. She's the house photographer at the Royal Albert Hall in London. Adam is a tour photographer, and it's a shot of him sitting behind Travis Barker of Blink-182. That is just my favorite drummer shot of all time, which is not easy to get. And he's on stage behind him at the Forum in Los Angeles, and it's just amazing.
Love it. I love it. Well, for folks that want to go to those for Christy Goodwin and Travis's shot, or to see those interviews or listen to them, just go to thisweekinphoto.com and do a search. And if you just search for Goodwin, for example, you'll bring up that interview, etc. Or you can just go listen to all of them on Steve's episode page on the TWIP network. So, Steve, let's close it off, man. So, what's coming up next for you? What's next on your trifecta journey? I'm always looking at new tech and ways to kind of integrate new tech into what I do. Yeah. For me, I really just want to refine the podcast a little bit better. I want to get a wide variety of guests on. I've even debated the idea of reversing it and doing audience images where we do like a critique type thing periodically where people submit images and I get a panel of people like you and me and Troy and Rick or whatever. And we just each give like a 30-second critique on each image. I like that. Just really kind of looking to supply resources to the photo community that are entertaining for one, but I really want to put stuff out there that I think will help photographers get better. I love it. All right, we'll leave it right there. Mr. Steve Brazill, host of the Behind the Shot podcast, geek, broadcaster, and et cetera, et cetera. Thanks for coming on the TWIP Talks podcast, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you having me. And welcome to your new home, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Like I said, first interview in the can. How about that?
Yeah. You need stuff on the walls, though.
I know. I wish I knew some photographers that had some good art for me to put up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right. We'll see you, buddy.